Welcome to Moon and Fire. I'm Emily Bailey, founder of Whole and Wild, where I guide women back to their sacred wisdom through ritual and cyclical living. I'm creating a sacred space for your whole self to be here. Your wisdom, your shadows, your longings, and your fierce power. This is a podcast for women who sense there's more. More depth, more magic, more of their untamed essence waiting to be remembered and unleashed. Welcome home, sacred woman. Let's begin. Today I want to share something with you that feels both deeply personal and universally true. Something about the nature of the sacred, the holy, the magical that I believe we've forgotten in our quest for enchantment. And I want to invite you into something beautiful that's being born of this understanding. A project that I'm calling the Bread and Wine deck. But before I tell you about the deck itself, I need to share the understanding that gave birth to it. Because this isn't just about a card deck. This is about a fundamental reorientation to where we find the sacred. There's been a lot of talk in spiritual circles about re-enchanting the world. About bringing magic back, about rediscovering wonder, about making life feel sacred again. And I understand the impulse behind these words. I really do. But I've come to believe that the language, this idea of re-enchanting, contains a subtle but profound error. It suggests that the world was once enchanted and then became mundane, that magic left and now needs to be called back. That the sacred was here and then departed. What if that's not true? What if the world was never disenchanted at all? What if we simply stopped seeing the enchantment that was always here? What if we don't need to re-enchant anything, but rather remember, literally put back together, our capacity to perceive the sacred that surrounds us in every moment, in every ordinary thing. This isn't just a semantic distinction. This is a completely different way of engaging with spiritual practice and sacred living. If we believe we need to re-enchant the world, then we're constantly seeking to add something, to bring in special elements, to create extraordinary experiences that will finally deliver us to the sacred. We're looking elsewhere, to crystals, to ceremonies, to pilgrimages, to special practices, believing that the sacred exists somewhere other than right here. But if the sacred has always been here, hidden in plain sight, within the ordinary, then our work isn't to create enchantment, but to develop eyes to see what's already present. I've spent probably my entire life at this intersection of the mundane and the holy. It's been both my greatest gift and my most profound challenge. I grew up in a tradition that took seriously the idea that ordinary things, bread and wine, water and oil, simple human touch, could be vehicles for the divine. That the sacred wasn't separate from the material world, but woven through it, waiting to be recognized. But I've also lived in the tension of that intersection, because when you stand at the place where the mundane meets the holy, you can find yourself misunderstood by people on both sides. There have been seasons when being this bridge felt beautiful, when I could help people who thought spirituality was only out there discover that it was right here in their kitchen, in their morning tea, in the way light falls through their window. When I could show people who were drowning in hustle culture that washing dishes could be prayer, that folding laundry could be meditation, that their entire ordinary life was already saturated with sacred possibility. But there have also been seasons when I've been made light of, dismissed by the spiritually serious who believed that my focus on the ordinary was too simple, too domestic, or too common, and questioned by the practically minded who thought that finding holiness in everyday moments was impractical, unnecessary, a luxury for people with too much time on their hands. When you live at the intersection, you're often misunderstood by those who stand firmly on either side of the spectrum. Those who believe that the sacred only exists in special places can't understand why you're finding God in your grocery store. Those who believe life is just practical survival can't understand why you're treating your breakfast like communion. But I've learned something profound through this tension. The people on either end of the spectrum often don't see each other precisely because they don't recognize the bridge. They don't believe a connection point exists. But I do. I deeply, profoundly, unshakably believe that the ordinary and the holy are not separate realms, but in the same reality, perceived differently. I believe that bread is just bread until you recognize it as sustenance given, as earth transformed, as gift received. I believe that wine is just wine until you taste it as joy made liquid, as time captured in a bottle, as communion shared. I deeply believe that bread and wine carry layers of divine creation and human co-creation as this symbol that shows us that there's sacred within the ordinary. There's a reason bread and wine have been sacred symbols across countless cultures and millennia. It's not because they're extraordinary. It's precisely because they're so ordinary. Bread is the most basic food. Ground grain, water, yeast, heat, and time. It's what sustains us, what shows up on tables across every culture, what represents daily provision. Bread doesn't pretend to be special. It simply is what it is, nourishment made tangible. Wine is transformation made visible. Crushed grapes becoming something entirely new through time and chemistry. It's celebration and communion, sorrow and joy, the ordinary made extraordinary through process and patience. And together, bread and wine represent something essential about the sacred. It's not elsewhere. It's right here, in the things that sustain us, in the substances that nourish us, in the ordinary elements of our daily lives. When we hold bread with consciousness, it becomes more than food. When we pour wine with intention, it becomes more than a drink. Not because we've added something magical to them, but because we've finally seen what was always true, that every meal is sacred and can be a communing opportunity, that every table is an altar, and that every act of nourishment is sacred. Not because we've added something magical to them, but because we've finally seen what was always truly there. This is the understanding that I want to share through the bread and wine deck, that we don't need to see the sacred in the extraordinary experiences or special practices. Those are beautiful, and I never want to say that a celebration or something that is out of the ordinary isn't worth honoring. And also, we need to develop the capacity to recognize in the bread we break and the wine that we share that there's something holy here. The bread and wine deck is a tool for developing this capacity, for training your awareness to perceive the sacred that's woven through your ordinary life. The bread and wine deck is a soulful 64 card collection designed to infuse everyday life with ritual, reflection, and resonance. It's rooted in what I call sacramental imagination, this capacity to see the divine woven through ordinary things, where bread is never just bread and wine is never just wine. The deck holds 8 core categories, each exploring a different dimension of the sacred ordinary. Loaves is one of the categories, and this is about sustenance, daily rhythms, and anchoring truths that steady us. Cups, which is reflections on emotion, connection, and being present with what we feel. Crumbs, which is invitations to notice the grace in the small, overlooked moments. Spices, cards that stir, challenge, awaken, the prophetic truth tellers. Benedictions, which is blessings to speak out loud or carry with you or post on your altar. Fields, exploring the invisible currents of grace, the electromagnetic coherence that connects all things. Knots, holding paradox and shadow, reminding us that healing comes through reorientation, not erasure. Ashes, honoring loss, grief, and what must be composted, the sacred work of letting go. And then there are wild cards. There are 5 cascade cards that mark trophic cascade moments, those threshold times when your yes creates ripples far beyond what you can see. And 3 ember cards, which are cards that remind us what still glows after everything else was burned away. The deck is designed to be used in multiple ways. It can be used in your personal space, pulling a single card every morning as a companion for your day ahead. It could be pulled around the table, passing cards in community gatherings, using them as conversation starters or shared blessings. It can be used for threshold moments when you're navigating transitions and marking sacred passages. It can be used as ritual anchors, so you can incorporate the cards into ceremonies that you're already creating and deepening your awareness of the holy in the mundane. I want to be clear about something important. This deck is not meant to replace sacred communities of belonging. In fact, I actually believe it can fit beautifully inside of them as a tool to continue deepening connection, sparking conversations that matter, and creating shared moments of wonder. The Bread and Wine deck is designed to serve both the solitary seeker and the gathered circle, honoring the truth that we need both personal practice and communal witness. And more than that, it's also an invitation to shift your entire orientation to the sacred, to stop seeking extraordinary experiences as the way to access the sacred, and to start recognizing the extraordinary nature of what's already here. So before I share more about the deck itself, I want to offer you a practice that you can begin using immediately to develop this capacity for sacred seeing. I call it the bread and wine practice, and it's beautifully simple. Today, choose one completely ordinary moment or activity, making your bed, brewing your tea, washing your hands, eating lunch, whatever feels accessible. Before you begin this ordinary activity, pause for just a breath. Place a hand on your heart and say either aloud or silently, "Let me see what's sacred here." Then, as you move through this ordinary activity, bring your complete attention to it. Not to make it special, not to add prayers or spiritual language, but simply to be fully present with what is. Notice the texture, the temperature, the weight, the smell, the sound. Notice the gift of having this thing or doing this activity. Notice the chain of circumstances, the work of other people, the resources of the earth, the mystery of existence that had to align for this ordinary moment to be possible. You're not trying to feel anything particular. You're not trying to have a spiritual experience. You're simply practicing the art of paying attention to what's actually here. And then, after you've completed this ordinary activity, pause again. Place your hand on your heart and say, "Thank you for showing me the sacred that was already here." That's it. That's the practice. Do this once a day for the next week. Choose a different ordinary moment each time. Notice what shifts in your capacity to perceive the sacred woven through your everyday life. Now, I want to share something that I'm genuinely excited about. The Bread and Wine deck is being born, and I'm inviting you to be part of bringing it into the world. I've been working on this deck for months now, pouring my heart into each card, each reflection, each invitation to see the sacred in the ordinary. The artwork is being created, the text is being refined, and I'm preparing to move into the printing and production phase. But here's where I need your partnership. To fund the first printing and shipping of the deck, I'm opening a pre-sale with the goal of selling 200 decks by December 19th. What I'm doing here is extending an invitation to you to join me in this beautiful experiment of helping one another remember that the sacred is already here. When you pre-order the Bread and Wine deck, you're purchasing a product, but you're also supporting the creation of a tool that can help shift how we collectively engage the sacred. You're joining a community of people that are committed to recognizing the holy in the ordinary. And you're investing in your own capacity to perceive magic in everyday moments. And you're helping bring this vision from concept to tangible reality. The deck is available for pre-order at a special early supporter price. And if we're able to hit the goal of 200 by December 19th, then the deck should be available by February of 2026. Plus, I'll be including some special bonuses for early supporters that I'm going to announce soon. But beyond the practical details, what I really want for you is to feel the joy and anticipation that I'm honestly feeling about the project. It's coming from a place of genuine excitement about what feels possible when we see our entire lives as sacred. I believe that we're living in a time where this shift in perception is desperately needed. We're drowning in information about wellness practices, spiritual techniques, and self-optimization strategies. And meanwhile, we're missing the sacred that's right here. We're overlooking the magic in our morning coffee while we search for enlightenment elsewhere. We're dismissing the daily bread, while we seek spiritual sustenance in special practices. The Bread and Wine deck is my offering towards reorienting us back to what's real, what's here, and what's already holy. It's a tool for the woman who feels spiritually hungry but doesn't have time for elaborate practices, reminding you that your entire life is already a spiritual practice when you bring awareness to it. For the person who's exhausted by the pressure to optimize and improve, showing you that you don't need to become different, you need to see differently. It's for the seeker who's traveled far looking for the sacred, inviting you to discover it was always here, hiding in plain sight in your own kitchen, in your own morning routine, or your own ordinary moments. It's for the woman who's been taught that the mundane is less than, revealing that the mundane is where the divine has always chosen to dwell. This deck is for anyone who's ready to stop seeking enchantment elsewhere and to start recognizing the enchantment that's already here. Coming back to where I started, I've spent my life at the intersection of the mundane and the holy, sometimes celebrated for being that bridge and sometimes dismissed by those on either end who don't believe the connection exists. But every project I create, every workshop I offer, every word I speak or write is an attempt to build that bridge more solidly, more visibly, and more accessibly. The Bread and Wine deck is another plank in that bridge. It's another way of saying the sacred isn't elsewhere. It's right here, in your bread, in your wine, in every ordinary moment that makes up your extraordinary life. And I'm not building this bridge alone. I'm inviting you to build it with me by pre-ordering the deck, yes, but even more importantly, by beginning to practice sacred seeing in your own life, by helping others recognize the holy in their ordinary moments, by refusing to accept the false separation between the mundane and the magical. When 200 of us say yes to this project by December 19th, we're not just funding a printing run, we're collectively affirming that we believe in the sacred that's already here. We're choosing to develop eyes to see what's been here all along. As we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with this truth. You don't need to re-enchant your life. You need to remember your capacity to perceive the enchantment that's always been here. Your bread is already sacred. Your wine is already holy. Your ordinary life is already woven with magic. The question isn't how to make it sacred. The question is, are you willing to see it? The Bread and Wine deck is my invitation to help you develop that capacity, and your pre-order is your yes to joining this beautiful project of collective remembering. I'd love for you to visit wholeandwild.com/bread-and-wine-deck to learn more about the deck and secure your pre-order. The link is in the show note. Whether or not you pre-order the deck, I invite you to begin the Bread and Wine practice this week. Choose one ordinary moment every day and ask it to reveal its sacred nature to you. Because the world doesn't need re-enchantment, it needs your remembering. May you recognize the sacred that surrounds you. May you taste the holy in your daily bread. May you drink deeply of the magic in ordinary moments. And may you always know that you don't have to seek elsewhere for what's already here. Remember the sacred cycles, reclaim your radiant fire, unleash your intuitive magic. Thank you for being here, Sacred Woman, and thank you for considering joining me in bringing the bread and wine deck into the world. Until next time.